As far back as I can remember, I've always loved trophy hunting, achievement hunting, whatever platform it was on, it didn't matter to me at the time. I loved it. But there's one game franchise specifically that I hold responsible for aligning my neurons in a way that has made me addicted to the forever pursuit of trophies and achievements and all things like that, and that's Resident Evil. I actually have a theory on why this is. I think the Resident Evil games have a very satisfying completionist loop. It usually looks like, you know, the first run where you're doing it on normal difficulty or whatever difficulty you would do it on. 7 out of 8 chance that the game is going to be a banger and it's going to be a good time. You're going to be slowly creeping your way through corners, a lot of them very horror based, so it's going to be very spooky, exploring the area, finding all the items, solving the puzzles. It takes a while and you're trying to, you know, desperately preserve resources. And so if you're anything like me, you get to the end of the game and you've used 3 healing items and you have 112 in reserve, you know, just in case the boss fight at the end happens to incapacitate you like 112 times and you get 100 bonus inventory slots to put them in. For the most part though, the first playthrough is like a sort of spooky crawl to the finish line. It's a good time. The second playthrough then, in most cases, is some kind of like speed run or bonus run or challenge run that's a lot funner and a lot faster because you're doing it as sort of a challenge, maybe on a slightly easier difficulty, and it's a lot funner. You know the game by now, you're not scared of what's around the corner. But the funnest part about this is usually the reward you get for doing it. The infinite weapon. Now this is my crack. The infinite weapon, in a lot of cases it's an infinite rocket launcher, turns the third playthrough, which has been built up, you know, as the veteran run, the professional run, the hardcore run, whatever it's called. It takes this thing that you were scared of your first run and it amps it up so you're even more scared of it. All the demons. And it gives you unlimited power. It's like a way to exercise the demons from your first playthrough, and it's incredibly therapeutic. And then after this point, there's usually some miscellaneous cleanup at the end. For this reason, throughout my life, I've many times dedicated myself to trying to get one of those oh so satisfying resi plays, but I had always wanted them all. An accomplishment I had still yet to achieve last year when they announced Resident Evil 9. Suddenly, it became clear. I knew what I must do. Like the Blues Brothers themselves, I was on a mission from God. Except it wasn't from God, it was from the part of my brain that won't let me leave things undone. And that mission was to platy all mainline Resident Evil games before the Resident Evil 9 comes out. At the time of this video's recording, that is 1 week away. At the time of the video release, I suspect it'll be about a day away. This video charts that journey. First of all, when I say platy, I mean by the PlayStation Platinum Trophy definition. All base game trophies need to be unlocked. DLC ones are not going to be required. I hate myself. I do not hate myself that much. Next, when I say mainline entries, it's as it sounds. It's 1 through 8, any versions of 1 through 8, so if they have been remade or remastered, any of those will do as long as they have a trophy system in place. I won't be including any of the non-numbered entries or spin-offs. I think that's purely because I wanted to avoid spending more time with this guy.
What's wrong, Steve? Shoot him!
Wait! I can't! No! Father!
Also, some of the newer entries, like the remake ones, have these little items you can buy that make your life a little easier. I'm outlawing them, like little cheating tokens or keys that unlock everything. They're outlawed. I don't disable trophies, but I kind of miss cheating, so I don't use them. Finally, I've sort of decided to do this video like a joint journey video, but also a ranking of them in difficulty. So least difficult to most difficult. Which brings us to the first game, the game that I find easiest.
For me, this is where it all began. To some, Resident Evil 5 marks the beginning of Resident Evil's downfall, their descent into more of an action-heavy slogfest approach. However, more and more I've been seeing love for this entry, and I think it's a mix of people from the Xbox 360 generation like myself growing up, having more of a voice, and I think most of it's nostalgia goggles, but I don't care. I think the opinion is starting to shift on it, and there's a lot of love for it. Is it perfect? No, of course it's not. Is it my favorite entry in the franchise? Definitely not. Did I have so much fun with this game that it became one of the games that defined my teenage years? Yeah, I did, and I think that's a big part of why I love it so much.
This game was just so much fun, but what made it even more fun was the online co-op. I hold the online co-op as being almost solely responsible as the bait in the hook, which lured me in to, I guess, the SS Capcom and well, slaughtered, I guess, but I also hold it responsible for forging the bonds of brotherhood between me and one of my best friends, Cammy. Yeah, me and Cammy would absolutely rinse this game. I mean, we would, do the co-op campaign together. We would stay at each other's houses, staying up all night, doing challenge runs, drinking energy drinks, eating junk. There really was no better feeling than logging on to your Xbox 360 after school and seeing your friend pop up online, because you knew what it meant, and it wasn't good news for these guys.
This game is the perfect representation of the system I spoke about earlier that got me hooked. Let's talk about what you have to do for this play. First off, you're going to do the first run of the campaign on normal. As hinted at earlier, it's pretty action heavy, so this isn't difficult at all, especially if you have a human co-op partner and not the sack of potatoes that is this game's AI. Next up, you're going to want to beat the game in under 5 hours. This is actually way easier than it sounds because you can stick it on amateur, although that's not really needed. And 2, as I remember, it doesn't need to be done in one run. So if you see in the chapter select menu that you took a long time to do a certain chapter, you can run through it again and your overall time will go down. Completing the game in under 5 hours nets you the holiest of rewards, the digital crack that is the infinite rocket launcher. Do you have any idea what it is to do a section of a game that really pissed you off, or in a scarier entry of a game really freaked you out on a harder difficulty setting than before, and now just blowing every pixel on screen to absolute smithereens? Simply put, who needs therapy? It's simply therapy is just simply redundant with an infinite RPG in your hands. Therapy found dead in a ditch. That brings us to the hardest part of this play, completing the game on professional difficulty. Under normal circumstances, this is pretty excruciating. You literally get murked in one single hit and your dying meter goes down while your sack of potatoes partner sure as shit isn't getting to you in time. But naturally, with BSAA deploying an incalculable military spending budget, this professional run is a little easier. Times that by 2 if you have a non-potato by your side. However, there are 2 notable exceptions that can be a real pain. This big fuggo over here, and a certain mind-controlled pain in the ass. This is because these are the 2 sections of the game that take your beloved rocket launcher away from you. Fuggo is an on-the-rails turret situation, and the possessed lady is more of a don't shoot military-grade rockets at this lady situation on account of the, possession.
These 2 sections gave me so much grief when I was younger. I mean, to be fair, I just graduated off of Lego Star Wars, so getting insta-stomped by this fuggo was expected, I suppose, but I will say that this is the only Resi game that I have platted multiple times. I think at this point I have platted it 3 times, I think now. The first time I definitely had a harder time, obviously I was younger and less experienced. The most recent time I definitely found it easier. These sections, also were easier, although they are still frustrating. I'd say once you get past like Rent-A-Brain over here, then you've pretty much done the professional run.
After that, you'll want to get an S rank on all chapters. Yeah, it can be a little tedious, but not too bad compared to professional. Again, you can do this on easy, or amateur, whatever it's called, but not bad. Finally, there are some collectibles via treasures and BSAA emblems, and some fun miscellaneous achievements like shooting a headshot while an enemy is in the air, deflecting an arrow with a knife, and yeah, killing an enemy with a rotten egg. Okay, next up, Resident Evil 3. That's a 2020 remake, of course, because it comes with the trophy list. Now, this game for me is COVID. And I don't mean that it's an airborne virus. I mean, I spent all my non-working hours in the first lockdown rinsing this when it first came out.
Now, I was actually one of the lucky ones that got to leave COVID pretty untraumatized. So I'm very grateful for that. I actually moved back home for a little while, and I'd spent some quality time with my, I rewatched the entire of Buffy the Vampire Slayer and Angel with my family. So yeah, for me, COVID will always be Resident Evil 3 Remake, Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and Angel. On paper, when you read what you have to do for this game, it sounds like a nightmare, or worse even, because this game literally has a difficulty setting above nightmare. I just love the idea of somebody taking a look at the difficulty settings, saying, oh, what should I play on? And they look at the hardest difficulty setting and they think, I'm not feeling quite that brave. I'm going to turn it down and play it on nightmare difficulty.
Which, by the way, they couldn't even do that because they would first have to beat the game on hardcore difficulty, which then unlocks nightmare, and then play it again to unlock Inferno. Inferno difficulty, which sounds like a bit of a de-escalation if you ask me. And if you disagree, I'd like you to apply these difficulty settings to a pizza menu. One of these difficulties is a spicy pizza, and the other one is like a shit yourself speedrun. You will of course need to beat the game on Inferno difficulty for a trophy, so all of what I've just described is required for the platinum. But they weren't quite satisfied with that, so they also decided you need to beat Inferno and get an S rank, meaning beating the game in less than 2 hours with fewer than 5 saves, all while on spicy pizza difficulty. Sounds pretty ridiculous, right? Well, it's actually not that bad. It's not bad at all. It's actually probably even easier than Resi 5, but I rank it here purely because I've platted Resi 5 a few times, so it just kind of feels easier to me. But anyway, here was my journey through the platy of Resident Evil 3 Remake. My priority will always be enjoying the game above trophy hunting, and yeah, I was excited when this dropped, so I just went through it for the first time, completely disregarding everything, pretty much just having a good time. I think, like everyone else, I was a little underwhelmed. After the absolute home run that was Resi 2 Remake, expectations had like sort of skyrocketed. I wouldn't say it's bad, obviously, it just doesn't do the original justice in the same way that Resi 2 Remake did, which is, to be fair, a very high bar. And I still had some good old-fashioned zombie killing fun though, so, no real complaints. Okay, now trophy hunting mode had been engaged, and you know what that means? It's time to replay everything on an easier difficulty, pizza-based difficulty. Collecting files. I got all of the misc stuff out of the way, so all of the locks, all of the weapons, etc. And along the way in this playthrough, I made a few saves at key moments in the game. And this is all for a very cunning reason, and well, that reason is, okay, so Resident Evil 3 Remake has a system which, it's fully in the game, so it's not cheating per se, but, they put it in there so it's for us to use. Especially if they're going to make you play the game like 3 times or maybe 4. Life's too short to suffer. Well, it doesn't really apply to trophy hunters because all we really like to do is make ourselves suffer, but anyway.
So basically for this, you can complete challenges, and these challenges reward you with points. These challenges revolve around kills. Basically, you have to get either like X amount of standard kills, X amount of shotgun kills, X amount of magnum kills. You get it. That's why I made those saves earlier, is so I could load into these specific areas and farm these enemies over and over again to get these kills, complete these challenges, and earn the points. The points that you could then use to buy
2 recovery coins, 2 iron defense coins, 2 hit pouches, and, of course, the infinite rocket launcher. Armed with all of that, you begin your hardcore playthrough, which, honestly, with all this stuff should probably be called softcore because, yeah, you're just gonna kind of melt everything. Not hard and tightest. My kind of game, to be honest. It's nightmare time. It's because it's nightmare time, I don't know. This misleading difficulty is even more misleading when you have an infinite source of the deadliest ammunition in the game and are always healing. Unsurprisingly, also a piece of piss. Okay, yeah, so this is definitely the hardest requirement in the game for the platy. You do sort of have to activate your brain here and make sure you're hitting the time, which can be a little tight. And also, don't fall asleep at the wheel so you die and have to go back half an hour to your last save. But honestly, for the most difficult challenge in the game, I'd say turning on your brain is a fairly, low bar, or a fairly reasonable ask. The genuinely difficult thing about Resi 3 is the endurance side of things. Like, do you really want to spend precious hours of your life in this game? Again, the same game again, playing it again. But hey, another planet in the bag. And it was COVID, so time was plummeting in stock at that point, so yeah. But speaking of endurance, this has perfectly set up the next game, because if I had to summarize the next game in one word, it would be endurance.
Oofy, oofy, oof, 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 oof. Oofy, oofy, oofy. Resident Evil 6. Where to begin? Well, let's begin in 2012.
That's where this game's platy journey started. Yes, it's 2012. I'm in high school. As I've already established, I loved Resident Evil 5. Loved, one of my favorite games at the time. And so me and my best friend, Cammy, who I played it with, we were waiting with bated breath, so eager, so hyped for this game. Still at the stage of your life when a year felt like an entire lifetime, but we waited. We watched all the trailers. I remember being in computing class, and when the teacher was like doing whatever, we'd be gathered around the monitor just watching the trailer over and over again, just getting so excited. But still, we waited until finally it was here. And while kind of sucked.
Okay. I'm sure, and in fact, I know there is a lot of love for Resident Evil 6, and I'm not ashamed to admit that in my cold trophy hunting heart, there is some love for Resident Evil 6. I am a fanboy of the franchise, so naturally, I do have a soft spot even for Resident Evil 6. The movement system, it's so fluid. You can pull off insane like gun tricks, like you can roll about the place. It's so much fun to play at times. Every so often, I would say, it's just the problem is there is so much. There's too much. The game is so long. Why is the game so long?
For context, for non-Resi players, an average Resi campaign will maybe run about 5 to 10 hours long, 15 maybe on the first go. That's kind of stretching it though. And that technically is the case for Resident Evil 6. It just feels longer and duller because the story is so bloody boring. Everyone's a president or a military man or a sister, some person. They make the stakes so astronomically high, like the whole global event, which I actually think is kind of cool in concept, but for me it just doesn't work. And then that's fine, but then there's literally 3 more campaigns. 3 more entire campaigns, and oh my god, some of the sections are literally the same, but you just control different characters. I am all for more, especially because I was so excited for this game and I'd been waiting for it for so long. So if you told me oh, we're just gonna give you more game for the same price, why is that a bad thing? But I think there's a difference between a long game and a bloated game, and this kind of is that. There's a lot of padding, man. There's just so much game here, so many characters, to the point where they become completely forgettable. It was kind of cool they brought back Sherry from Resi 2, but this guy, I bet half of the people who have played this game can't even remember his name. Quite far and away the most non-character in franchise history. This game also features iconic characters such as mutated Deborah. Good luck trying to get that Funko Pop. Sold out completely. And the main villain, such a classically menacing name. Forget Leatherface. Forget Freddy Krueger. This name will strike fear into the hearts of all those familiar. Derek Simmons. And last but not least, for all of Resident Evil 6's downfalls, it does introduce probably my all-time favorite Resi character, Carla Spores. Carla Spores redefined what it meant to be a video game character, what it meant to be a woman, to be a spore woman, to be a giant spore woman. With a week left to go until Resi 9, we are all praying for the return of Carla Spores. With all that being said, I was a teenager. I was excited. It was the Xbox 360 era. I was in high school. Times were great, and I had so much fun. I have a lot of good memories associated with it, even if it was somewhat of a slog. Because of how long the game is and the fact that you have to beat it again on professional, all 4 of the campaigns. So yeah, I took a little break and decided to come back later.
Yeah, okay, so may have gotten a little distracted with the whole life thing there, but October last year rolls around, and you know the idea starts to percolate, and I'm thinking, okay, maybe it's time to finally finish what I started. But as I'm saying this and as I'm thinking this and maybe committing to doing this challenge, the one game that strikes fear into my heart that I still have to do is Resident Evil 6, and just because of how bloated it is, how boring it can be at times. But an even scarier thought pops into my head, and that is, if I don't have access to my original 2012 save, I know because I looked up what's required of it, that I'm not only going to have to do all of the campaigns on professional, all 4, you know, each with 5 chapters, so it's like 20 chapters on professional, but I am going to have to do an original run through to unlock professional. Then, so it's like an 8 camp, that'll be like 40 chapters worth of content. And yeah, I mean, maybe in the past, but my, you know, very employed here, so not really looking to do 40 chapters of Resident Evil 6 gameplay. So yeah, I thought, well, let's do something. Let's just real quick check my Xbox 360 save data. That'll be real quick, right? My plan was super simple. Try and turn what would be a boring and monotonous task into something which was fun. I was going to do this by getting my OG 360, getting the save from it. That would cut the playthroughs in half. Immediately, it's a lot more doable. The replay aspect of it, making it mundane, already taken out of it. As well as that, it would mean that I could then, you know, plug in my 2 Xbox 360 controllers and play the game split screen co-op campaign with my old buddy Cammy, who I did Resi 5 with, you know, the same friend who I would be in computing class with, watching the Resident Evil 6 trailer, eagerly excited for it to come out. You know, we'd get the band back together like 13 years later, and we would do it split screen co-op on professional, and it would be a really good time. Just need my save. That would be super quick. Definitely don't foresee any issues with that.
Wrong, idiot. I'm a hoarder, and I don't know where any of my things are. First up, I hunt my copy of Resident Evil 6. It's just a mess of games. I don't know where it is. Nothing is where it should be. It's like an instruction manual for like a new air fryer, Ben 10 Galactic Racing on 360, a Spanish A1 textbook. Then there's like this is the system I'm dealing with here. Completely lawless. But eventually, I find it. Wrong again. Head, you found a voiceover disc. That's right, a disc entirely for downloading the voiceover files. Like it's crazy to me that this did not take off as a trend, and all games didn't do this subsequently, right? Like, perfect for when you're craving the German dub of Resident Evil 6, you know, all those times you want that. Not perfect for when you want to play the actual game, though. But, you know, it's relatively cheap now. It was a few bucks on Amazon, so I just ordered another copy. Okay, great, I have the game. Wait, where the hell is my Xbox 360? We're looking, like, just like a raccoon sifting through masses of cables. Then my brother actually finds it in my old childhood home, but nobody's home, and I didn't pack it away with the power bank because I'm an idiot. But that's fine. It's not like everything I've ever bought is just a mess of wires and cables. Wrong again. All my stuff is a bunch of cables. It's all just in bags and bags of cables, and they don't relate to each other. It's like they're all crossed, you know, polygamous consoles. It's just a mess. It's a disaster. It takes me forever, but I do find it. Okay, I'm ready. I have the game, I have the console, I have the power bank. I'm ready to find out whether my save is there or not. Let's do this. I blow the dust off the top, boot it up, makes a nice, healthy sort of dying whale noise, as it tends to do, and load to the dashboard in a record 10 minutes time. Oh, that nostalgic Xbox 360 dashboard. How I love it. I get my copy of Resident Evil 6, open my disc tray, take out my Resident Evil 6 disc, and put in my copy of Yes, that's right. The reason I could not find my Resident Evil 6 disc was because it was already in my 360. The last time I used my Xbox 360, it turned out, was 5 years prior, when me and Cammy decided to do a sort of Resi Run October, where we'd play through 1 through 7. 8 was not out yet at the time. As part of that, we decided to roll credits on one Resident Evil 6 campaign. And yeah, so I'd left the disc in there. So mystery solved. I now have 2 copies of Resident Evil 6 and double the dubbing tracks. So that's... Yeah? Okay, anyways, back to the mission at hand. It was time to boot up the game and answer the question that had been gnawing away at me. Did I have my original save data intact, or would I be condemned to play through all 4 campaigns from scratch twice over? I boot up the game, select my hard drive, arrive at the menu, press start to enter the game. My start button is broken.
Shut up! I don't want to talk about it!
I'm trying everything. I'm kung fuing this button to death. I'm stabbing it. I'm pressing it down with all the power of a brittle-boned gamer. I'm plugging in a keyboard, fully expecting it not to respond, but it does. The keyboard responds. You can use a keyboard on a 360 if you didn't know that, but you cannot replace the start button input with it. So it doesn't work. I'm like hacking this thing to shit. Like if you look at it now, it's a victim. It's been fucking cut up. But I couldn't get it to press or register. I then decided I was going to go to my storage and see if I could find my save data just to see if it was present. And I did see something that worried me. I saw Resident Evil save data that said created 2020. And I'm like, okay, whoa. Do you mean created 2020 or updated? Last updated 2020? You know, from our Resi run when we last played, because updated is fine. But if it means created, then we're going to have a problem. But without a functioning start button, I had no way to find out. Next stop was sex. Yes, the questionably named computer exchange, a sort of GameStop, but instead of ripping you off for games, they rip you off for games and other things. So I go there. I ask if they have any 360 controllers. They say yes. They say they do. That's great. They hand me this shiny looking wired one. It's a little pricier than I was expecting. I think it was like 30 quid, and I was like, well, alright, well, I guess. And I double check it's definitely compatible with my Xbox 360 Elite. They confirm it. And I'm like, whatever, let's just get to the bottom of this. I'm like, whatever. At this point, I'm like, I'm so invested, and I'm impatient, and I want to know whether the save data is there. So, trot, I go back to my flat, plug in my shiny new, but pre-owned controller, and go to boot up the game. The controller doesn't work. The controller does not work.
No!
The guy had sold me a controller made to look like a 360 controller, but it was only compatible with the Xbox One onwards and PCs. I wanted to tear my eyes out. All I wanted to know was if I had this save data. It was not supposed to be this ridiculous quest. It was never supposed to be this. I'm in too deep at this point. I'm like a fiend. I'm like foaming at the mouth at the idea of finding out this truth, whether I have this saved data or not. It's already gone too far. I'm in too deep at this point. And then I get an idea. I'm meeting my friend the next day, and he's one of these sort of tech wizard friends that just has every contraption known to man. His like flat runs on an OS, the type. He's also the kindest person on earth, I think. So I know if he has an Xbox 360 controller, he's gonna lend it to me. And I message him and he does. So bingo, like that worked out. And so the next day we meet up. I nervously, with hands sweaty from anticipation, I nervously ask him about the Xbox 360 controller, just twitching a little bit because I need these answers. And he goes, oh, sorry, man, I actually couldn't find it in the end. Now, I'm not a crack addict. I have never been a crack addict. But in that moment, I think the closest to one I've ever been, or what my estimation of it would be. What my friend, my sweet, beautiful, selfless friend didn't realize was that I was on a mission. I had become so fixated on this quest, this comedy of errors, which saw me closing my eyes to go to sleep while being taunted by my Resident Evil 6 save data from the back of my eyelids. Nothing else mattered. Get the fuck out my fly, I said. Get out. Nah, I didn't. We like hung out and we had a great time, and I ordered one on Amazon. It arrived. I plug in the controller. I press the start button.
It responds. We have a responsive start button we have got into the menu. Praise be to Resi Jesus. I am in. I nervously, shaking. I'm going, navigating the menu, navigating to the statistics menu, where I know will hold the stats which will tell me if this is my save data from 2012 or if it's gone. I open the statistics menu. It's there. It's there. My save data is there. This honestly probably saved the run, because I think if I genuinely had to face the prospect of doing 2 entire playthroughs of Resi 6, I probably would have scrapped the idea. I mean, yeah, no, I probably wouldn't. I'm demented enough. I probably would have done that, but I think it would have broken me in more of a way. But yeah, 15-year-old Max really came in clutch here and saved chronically employed Max some precious time. Minus however long that took to do. I don't even want to add that up.
Okay, so as established, step 1 of this play was beat all 4 campaigns. That was done in 2012, and praise be to the Capcom heavens, still saved on my console. The next step was to beat the game on Professional, whilst also getting all the serpent emblems. They're basically like the BSA emblems from Resi 5, but there are 80 of them. Yay. Professional can be a real pain in this game, but as always, you can take the edge off with some nice perks. This game has its own skill system, which I actually kind of like. Basically, you purchase skills using points found throughout the game and equip a total of 3 skills in a loadout. These can range from increased crit damage to increased Javo damage, or whatever the fuck they're called, and but critically, you can include infinite ammo for certain weapons. Unfortunately, not my beloved Infinite RPG, but you can get the Infinite Magnum. For Leon's campaign, I equipped the Infinite Magnum, increased firearm damage level 3, and increased defense level 3. Honestly, made the game feel like normal. As long as you paid attention, and me and Cammy were doing it in co-op, so while it was still an endurance test, we made it as fun as possible. We continued the campaigns on a regular basis, get together after work, do a few chapters. Some campaigns required slight tweaks to the loadout due to not having a Magnum, but for the most part it was plain sailing. Between sessions, I chipped away at some of the more misc trophies like Flying Ace for piloting the VTOL without getting hit, sneaking around for getting through the aircraft carrier's bridge without being noticed, and grinding out skill points to get mad skills for maxing out all the upgradable skills, until eventually all that was left was the professional run.
So me and Cammy decided to lock in. Gone were the days of, high school sleepovers. We kind of did them in reverse now, because our work schedules meant that it was more, feasible to, instead of stay up to 7 a.m. to begin at 7 a.m. and, game until the night. The second to last session of Resi 6 sticks in my mind the most, because it was leading up to Cammy's birthday, so it was going to turn Cammy's birthday that midnight, and so I thought, let's do our session then, and we'll game all day, we'll have a dinner for your birthday, and then we'll game up until midnight, and then we'll have a big celebration, and then we can go home. It was like a fun, nostalgic idea. We used to do something kind of similar back in the day, so I thought it would be kind of bringing it back. What I did not realize is I was condemning Cammy to a horrific torture session for his birthday. By about 7 p.m, Cammy is already done. He is ready for bed. But we're kind of middling through Chris's campaign, so he's like, okay, I'm gonna lock in and we're gonna finish Chris's campaign. Okay, by 11 p.m, this man is delirious. This man his eyes are hovering. This is some form of ancient torture. By this point, we're at the very end of Chris's campaign, and we're at the bit where you're getting chased by that fucking ugly ogre looking thing, and we just keep fucking it up. We're both tired, and every fail I see a little part of Cammy die, a little light fades from his eyes, because he knows that failure means we're gonna have to redo it, and he's just that much further away from his bed. Cammy pretty deliriously at this point needs his bed, and it's definitely what he should have done, but at this point it's maybe 20 minutes to midnight, and so we beat the campaign. campaign, and we hang on for his birthday, and we have like a sort of deflated celebration, and Cammy probably goes and has the best sleep of his life, I imagine, until he woke up for his birthday breakfast that he'd booked to go to with his girlfriend. I saw him that evening. He was half man. He was not really there. He was gone. I'm pretty sure I destroyed this man on his birthday, but we did Chris's campaign.
We eventually got together and wrapped up Ada's campaign at a more reasonable time, and then we'd done it. Resident Evil 6 was platted. Quite an adventure that was. Oh, and yeah, that Resident Evil 6 is just the worst mainline Resi. I think that's just a definitive truth at this point.
Resi 7. I swear I actually naturally ordered them this way by difficulty, but 6 and 7 just happen to follow each other, but it's quite appropriate because this is a very pivotal point in Resi history. So, on the tail of Resi 6, I would say it was panned by users and critics alike. It just was generally regarded as the worst Resident Evil in the franchise, at least mainline. So, you know, Capcom kind of had two options here. They could double down and say, no, we believe in this sort of formula, this direction we're going. We're just going to implement it again. You know, it would have made money. People buy it at the end of the day. You know, I would have still bought it. I'll be real. But at probably what was the most make or break moment in the franchise history, they made a critical choice, and that was to go back to the root of the franchise, what people love most, the horror.
Enter Resident Evil 7, turning point in Resi history. It was clear fans had become frustrated with their beloved horror being watered down with lukewarm action, to the point where you couldn't really taste the horror anymore. It was like going to like one of these like House of Horrors, but you're allowed to drive through it in a machine gun mounted Humvee kind of thing. I don't know, something like that. So Resident Evil responded in a way that I think is responsible for reviving the series, you know, giving it a breath of fresh air that helped pave the way for our new golden age, one I believe that we're still in. By this point, I was in university and barely had enough time to game. You know how it goes. But of course, I made an exception for a new Resident Evil. At first, even though it was most definitely what the series needed, I was a bit opposed to it. I mean, I'd been introduced to the series with a roided up rocket launching BSAA agent, so I think initially I resisted this sort of hard reset, but it quickly turned into one of the most memorable Resident Evil playthroughs I ever had. It was, you know, in the end, as it's known, the breath of fresh air the franchise needed, because it was just so fucking scary. Now on to Platty talk, which happens years later. Very recently, in fact. As I said, I was deep in university, so doing 3-hour no healy, no item box runs wasn't really on the cards. Years later, I decided to pick up the pieces. As always, I'd started with a regular normal playthrough. What was left after was a bunch of collectibles and misc objectives, a playthrough in under 3 hours, a playthrough with 3 heals or less, a playthrough with no item box, and finally, a playthrough on the hardest difficulty setting, in this game known as Madhouse. As usual, there was a bonus weapon you could unlock to take the edge off the hardest difficulty, and I wasn't about to let the gameplay loop down. The requirement to unlock it was for completing the game in under 5 hours. Also a trophy requirement. So the tactics started to become clear. Stack the speedrun, no heal, no item box run altogether, which would also set me up for Madhouse. So that's what we did. Out of all the speedrunning trophies in the franchise, this is one of the more generous ones. I think the most generous one, actually. Usually I'm the sort of person who'll agonize over each section, second guessing myself over whether I could have been faster, because I have this deep fear of getting to the end of a playthrough and being like 1 minute off. With this run, I didn't feel the need to check the time at all. They are generous with it. As long as you know what's ahead, it's not bad. And the lack of item box and heals aren't really a problem on easy. I will say Marguerite can still be a pain with no healing. So if you're going to use any heals at all, I'd save them for her. Aside from that, though, it really wasn't too bad. And complete the run saw me unlock those trophies, as well as this game's bonus item, Circular Saw.
Yeah, so this game decided that infinite military-grade rockets may be a little overpowered for the poor old Baker family, and instead opted to reward you with a saw. I mean, I get it. The game's like a lot more close quarters orientated than a lot of the previous entries, maybe even any of the entries. So it probably would trivialize things a bit more than usual, but I definitely have a bone to pick with this game and its bonus weapons. For example, like at the end of the game, you know, Chris throws you that weapon and you use it to bam, 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 and it completely eradicates, you know, the threat. Evelyn completely eradicates her, you know, a super powerful weapon, right? And they give you this weapon for beating the game on normal. Like, amazing. But they like nerf it to all hell. Like it not only is it, you know, it's a powerful handgun, but it's essentially just a handgun. It's not like melting enemies like it does at the end of the game. But they give it 3 bullets in its clip. It's just so irritating. Like, Now I see how this looks. You know, a man complains hard mode is hard. You know, in other news, water is wet, right? But there are runs in games that I do for a challenge, and there are runs in games that I do for fun. At the core of that satisfying resi loop that I spoke about earlier is the ability to turn your demons into paste. Almost every other, I think literally every other Resident Evil game, in the mainline anyway, understands that, and it's part of it. But Resident Evil 7 kind of like half gets it. It's like it half commits to it, but you know, it just feels like if you're gonna commit to this whole bonus weapon thing, like give us a fun weapon to blow things away, you know, like giving us a gun with 3 bullets just feels like Capcom dangling a carrot in front of us saying, we know what you want, but we're not going to give you it. We're just going to give you this. And the circular saw is good. It's very powerful, and it does trivialize a lot of the fights. But I honestly feel at some point during that run when I was using it, it makes it feel like more of a challenge run than anything, just because you're having to get in people's faces so much. And it's not even like you can rely on infinite ammo in this game, because normally you use infinite ammo to take the edge off the hardest difficulty run. But in this game, infinite ammo is like an item you get, but you get it as a reward for doing the hardest run in the game on Madhouse. So yeah, it doesn't really follow the same structure.
That said, Madhouse difficulty really wasn't as bad as it sounded like. The return to the classic ink ribbon save system did kind of scare me, but in practice it's kind of irrelevant because you get more than enough to save pretty much whenever you want. There were a few difficult bits. The old house section can be a bit nippy, with Marguerite always being a pain, and mutated Jack fight was bloody annoying. Actually, me and Cammy had a bit of trouble with this. Yeah, I'd say that's probably the most annoying bit. Honestly, probably the most annoying thing about it though is that in this playthrough you need to collect all 33 antique coins. For some reason, this game decided to have collectibles specific to the hardest difficulty setting. So you need to collect all coins on like easy or normal, and then on top of that and collect them all again on the entire Madhouse playthrough, which means if you miss one, you'd have to do an entire Madhouse playthrough again. Thankfully, that didn't happen, and managed to collect all the coins. After that, there was some easy collectible cleanup and misc trophies, made easier by the fact that I had now unlocked infinite ammo, but that was it. Resi 7 was platted. Overall, not that hard, just ranks a little higher due to being a bit stingy with the bonus items. A solid entry and still good fun to play. Resident Evil 1, where it all started. The game that gave us Chris Redfield, Jill Valentine, Umbrella, Albert Wesker, and tank controls. Oh god, the tank controls. I know some people have that on lock because they grew up with it, but on my first proper playthrough, or partial playthrough I should say, with my cousin and brother on the GameCube version, I was having a real hard time with the tank controls. I did eventually get used to it, but my god, it took us so long just to get to the Black Tiger fight. So long to get there that in fact that finding out that wasn't the end of the game, I think collectively broke us and we just never finished it. Although yeah, years later, when that remaster came to the PS4, I would eventually finish it. There's something really special about the first game. It's a franchise that knew exactly what it was from the beginning. So many of the iconic things about Resident Evil were defined right here in the first entry. It's a game that has aged amazingly. Even with just a little touch up and no tank controls, the actual game design at its core is so tight, so ahead of its time. How is this game to play? Well, if you look at all the things that you have to do, it immediately sounds way harder than any other entry, like by far. I put this off for years because of this. To get the party for Resident Evil 1, you need to beat the game on normal, which unlocks real survivor mode, or it's like an automatic hard mode with extra difficulty quirks added. I'll go into that later. Complete the game on invisible enemy mode, which you have to beat the game whilst all enemies are invisible. Beat the game while only using the knife. Beat the game while visiting every room and picking up every single item. Beat the game in 3 hours or less. Beat the game without saving. That's right, no saves. No auto saves. So if you die at the very end of the game, you are going back to the beginning. Yeah, so I basically read that years ago and went, yeah, fuck that. But after setting myself on this challenge, the time had come. As you might have guessed from its positioning, it wasn't quite as hard as it sounds with some strategy, but there were definitely some playthroughs that really gave me bother. Not to mention I had to do 6 full playthroughs to unlock the play. So yeah, let's go through them.
So my first playthrough for this game was on normal as usual, or well, it's not normal actually. It's Resident Evil 1 has like the weirdest, most nonsense difficulty system in like probably, well, maybe not ever. I won't commit to that, but it's confusing as hell.
Reading this, I, as I'm sure many others thought, yeah, okay, that'll be hard, that'll be medium, and that'll be easy. So I'll go for the hike option, or normal run. Whereas everyone's like, "Psych, you idiot. You just selected easy mode. That's clearly normal, easy, and very easy, you baby, you big baby. You need easy mode." But yeah, the first playthrough, really nice, loved it. Right amount of spooky, maybe a little bit much of the where the fuck do I go, but overall, amazing experience. This isn't quite as bad as it sounds. There are a few parts which are a slight pain, but you can stick it on taking a walk mode. And yeah, you just have to kind of be careful with inventory management here, especially playing as Chris because he only has 6 slots and that's who I decided to do it as. You have to kind of learn this like sort of psych and flick mode, as I like to call it. It's like a kind of the ultimate strategy of like baiting them and then doing a little weak twirl and walking forward. It's truly a technique that cannot be spoken. It's only learned through repeated failure and eventually success. I went for the good ending here. Requires a little bit more effort, but there was a trophy attached to it, and I didn't want to do it on my next Chris run, which was going to be the invisible enemy run, but not quite yet. This run was dedicated to getting every single item of the game. So I did it as Jill, because she has 8 slots versus Chris's 6. Since I needed to beat the game on normal for the next step, and for the reasons mentioned earlier, I had not done that yet, I booted it up for another playthrough. Yeah, this one was pretty long-winded. I had to use a guide to make absolutely sure I was getting everything, because, you know, fuck having to do all that again. But yeah, it wasn't too bad, just a little bit, you know, long-winded and monotonous.
Okay, yeah, this was definitely the hardest run in the game. So Real Survivor, for people who don't know, is kind of like a bonus mode, which is based on like a prototype version of the original game. So there's some modifiers in it. For example, you know, the item boxes, you know how usually you can, all the item boxes are linked, so you put an herb in one item box so you can get it in another. Well, in this prototype, they were not linked. All the item, I guess they would function as boxes would in real life. You know, if you put an herb in one, you'd have to go to that specific box to get the item. And this mode was kind of like a fun little nod to that prototype. I mean, if your idea of fun is backtracking across half of the map to find a key item where you lost and you can't remember where you put it, then yeah, it's a very fun nod to that.
I should now mention that this game does include a way to get the ultimate weapon, the infinite rocket launcher, by beating the game in under 3 hours. And that time is much tighter than most of the other franchises' speedrunning requirements. However, you cannot use this weapon in either of its bonus modes, like the Real Survivor one or the Infinite Enemies one. So yeah, this was going to be a little annoying. And I decided to make this run rougher by combining it with a 3-hour speedrun. I figured I was going to be blasting through it anyways, so it can do much more harm, but yeah, I wasn't really counting for the kind of quick-fire decision-making a tight time limit would require, and combined with this very punishing difficulty. The way this playthrough went when I started out, I was being hyper ruthless about getting the beginning perfect. Not getting hit too much so I'd run out of supplies for the first half of the game, and not getting lost or making a wrong turn so the speedrun wouldn't be dead. I was probably too ruthless here, to be honest. I think that half the time dedicated to this run was dedicated to just getting this first save. I would get hit and rerun, get hit again, rerun again, get confused having not made it to that point for a while, and so make a wrong turn, look back on myself, and start again, load it back. It kind of went on for a while. It felt really punishing, but in hindsight, I think I just made it that way. It is hard, don't get me wrong, but I think I was being like so stubborn. So yeah, that was kind of a me thing. Eventually, I made it pretty far into the first act in a decent time without taking much damage, so I was happy with that, and I decided to make my first save. After this, I think making it so impossibly hard for myself during the opening section of the game made the rest of the game feel comparatively manageable, especially because now I was really getting the hang of things. I mean, it was my 4th time through. Eventually, with some difficulty at key boss sections, I made it to the end and absolutely sprinted through the final third of the game to make sure I hit the 3-hour time limit, and boom, the run was done. Yes, I had failed the speedrun by 9 seconds. And I knew I couldn't even remember where I'd saved it last because I knew I was being so fast that cutting off any amount of time was going to be just tight. Like, it was going to be really tight. I definitely made a little short-sighted decision there, not saving it, but I was trying to not waste any time. After finishing punching through my drywall, I collected myself and loaded back in. One thought struck fear into me though. I felt I had kind of optimized my route as much as I could already, and I wasn't sure where I was going to be able to find those 19 seconds. I tried again, beelining harder than I had already beelined, only to get to the very end and make the dumbest mistake. I overthought a direction at the final stretch. I kind of got confused as to like what part of the screen constituted the next section, and I kept running back on myself. So I fucked it and I loaded it back again. I ran it again, locking in, and this time it was done. Beating the game on the hardest mode and done the speedrun, unlocking the infinite rocket launcher in the process. Too bad I can't use it for the next run. Invisible enemy mode, in a surprise to no one, is a mode where all enemies are invisible. This includes boss fights, everything. You can stick the game on very easy, which does help, but the best thing going for you in this run is a sort of photographic memory of the enemy spawn locations. Thankfully for me, I just happened to have beaten the game 4 times in a row, so I had that down. I don't honestly have too much to say about this. I kind of just bolted through it, trying to kill as few zombies as possible, because for those who don't know, in the first game, when you kill zombies, they come back as crimson heads. Basically, they go from Night of the Living Dead zombies to 28 Days Later zombies, and you don't want invisible 28 Days Later zombies. Since I'd already got the good ending as Chris, I went for the bad one here, meaning it was a speedy run, and another one was in the bag. Not gonna lie, at this point I was pretty ready for it to be done. It's a great game, but even the best of games tend not to hold up to the play 6 times in 1 week test. This run was dedicated to any missed trophies I had left, but the main goal was to beat the game without saving. No saves. No auto-saves. You get to the end of the game and you die, like I said, you're going all the way back to the beginning. Thankfully, I'd made sure the infinite rocket launcher was unlocked, so I knew all enemy encounters were going to be doable, as long as I didn't, zone out. What gave me waking nightmares, though, were the sections that result in instant death, regardless of your unlimited firepower. The boulder section, for example. But most of all, the one that scared me the most was a section at the very end of the game where you're sort of carrying this volatile, like explosive sample, and if you accidentally sprint or an enemy interrupts you, it blows up and you instant die. So I sped run through the manor, blowing everything to smithereens. I arrived at the boulder section, arse clenched tight, I skirted the corner and made it alive. I took care of the rest of the game, and before long it was time to transport the explosive substance. Chris moves as if his life and my run are in his hands, because they were. I was like sweating buckets at this point. I'm not doing this again. I'm ready for this to be over. I had this deep fear of this random enemy I'd never seen spawn before coming out of the woodwork and fucking me up, but thankfully that did not happen. It was done. I ran through the rest of the game and then it was done. Another platinum in the bag. Next up, my favorite game in the entire franchise.
Okay, it's now 2019. 2019, big year for me. I graduate university. It's the year me and Cammy, my brother in Infinite Ammo Arms, decide that we're gonna move in together. We're gonna get a flat and we're gonna live together. It's gonna be great. It's gonna be like, old times, but, nobody to tell us to go to bed at 4 a.m. We can just keep gaming. To be fair, we did kind of live in a lawless land where we could stay up as long as we wanted. Yeah, it's everyone's dream. You move in with your best friend and you're just gaming. Me and Cammy, I remember being specifically excited to, relive the golden age of some of our favorite franchises, Resident Evil being chief amongst them. What we didn't know was this year would be the beginning of a new golden age for the Resident Evil franchise. This would be the year that they would begin to release their stellar remake series, releasing what is, in my opinion anyway, the greatest Resident Evil game in the franchise, and honestly I think one of the best games ever made. Resident Evil 2 Remake.
This game is just chef's kiss. It's everything I love about the franchise all in one. The horror. Oh my god. The horror of Mr. X chasing you around Raccoon City Police Department. The moments of stopping and calmly checking if that creak you heard was Mr. X, a zombie, or your imagination. The goofy, the B-movie action action, plot, and characters. Leon S. Kennedy never having looked better as he delivers his cheesy one-liners. The gameplay, oh god, the gameplay in this game feels so good. The RE engine really delivered the definitive zombie killing experience. Shooting zombies in this game is so satisfying. You can really feel the impact as the zombie recoils from your shot, but mercilessly remains alive even after a clip of bullets and pursues you into anxiety-inducing deaths. All of this in a tight, perfectly paced package. Endlessly replayable, even letting you fill in the missing pieces as a different character. I love everything about this remake, and I will never tire of it. Now, all that being said, how is it to play? Hard. It's pretty hard, but it's doable. Mostly because of how enjoyable it is. And in fact, it's so enjoyable that I didn't even think about the play for a while. I just liked replaying it, and so I was just playing it and playing it over the years. My Platy journey only really started years later. I knew I'd love to do it one day, so I was almost saving this one actually. When I set out in this challenge, I knew that the time had come. I checked what I had left to do, which was the lion's share of the hard stuff, but I had beaten all of the character campaigns on each A and B variant. I'd also done the survivor mode, which can be a pain for some. Basically, it's like a little extra mode where you play as the very well-equipped hunk and you must escape or like a bunch of zombies. I remember being a little nippy, but I think I just did it purely out of fun, so it's not bad. Just, you know, you just have to lock in for a bit. First, I did a run as Leon, where I went for an S rank combined with the trophy for clearing the game without opening the item box. To get an S rank in this game on standard, you simply need to beat the game under a certain time limit. It's pretty generous, so I didn't have too much trouble. I also accidentally got the one here for taking 14,000 steps or fewer. I did run into a slight issue, which is my worst nightmare as a hoarder. I simply just did not have the resources for the final boss, so even though I was on standard difficulty, I kind of ran into like not like a soft lock, I wouldn't go that far, but it was difficult. I essentially ended up having to do this fight with nothing to defend myself and just knifing him. You only have to survive a certain amount of time here beyond the point before the rocket launcher is thrown, but he punishes you even on standard, and when you're running on empty and have no healing items, it can be really tricky, but it was very avoidable. It just me getting too comfortable, so yeah, not really part of the run's difficulty. Next up, I was weighing up what to do. After the S rank run, I'd unlocked the Infinite Samurai's Edge pistol, which was a nice bonus. I knew I also had to get an S rank with Claire and beat both campaigns on hardcore. I probably should have just gotten the Claire S run done and then prepared for the hardcore runs, but there was one thought that kept popping into my mind: the infinite rocket launcher. Like an infinite rocket firing siren, it called to me. But this truly was a forbidden song.
Because this game asks way more of you than any other game in the franchise to unlock the infinite ammo rocket launcher. You need to attain a hardcore S+ rank. So that's beating the game on hardcore, which by the way kicks your ass on this game. You need to do it in 2 hours and 30 or less, which is pretty tight. You're not allowed to use any bonus items, so it has to be like a new game. And you're allowed 3 saves or less.
Put it all together and you get an incredibly hard run. It's so hard that it's not even a requirement for the play. You can get the platinum perfectly fine without doing it. You don't need this hardcore S+ at all. And if it were any other Resi game, I don't think I would have bothered, but I found in this venture that my love for this installment truly knew no limits. So out of pure love for the game, I decided I wanted to hardcore S+ it. It also has the benefit that if pulled off, the rest of the play would be plain sailing, wielding the ultimate power, satisfying that loop I love so much. Fear, true fear, followed by frame rate melting power. But first, I had to get through it. I'd like to shout out a specific YouTuber here called Darkness. I honestly don't know how this would have been possible without this guy's help. He's doing God's work out here. Like, I have consumed a lot of video game guides in my time as a trophy hunter, but this has to be one of the best. Like, his Everyman's Guide, where he like breaks it down, but like acknowledging that you're not some sort of like military trained proto gamer and you make mistakes, you know, just that allowing for mistakes to be made. And he just makes it feel more of a chill experience, and I think a big reason why I had so much fun doing it. So yeah, shout out, Cheskes. Yeah, more specifically though, this video helped me map my route out of the game. This was the rough structure I was following. So segment 1, I had to do the RPD section until I get all the 3 emblems and open up the statue for the first boss. Ideally, you want to have this done by about 25 minutes. Then this is where you're going to make your first save. Even though this is one of the shorter stints between saves. The shortest stint between a save, 25 minutes, but I definitely think this is one of the hardest just because, you know, if you die, which I died so many times, you know, your monotony of going to the main menu, starting a new game, just feels like it's a lot more demoralizing, I feel, when you start from the beginning of the game. There's also just a lot going on early doors. But yeah, after you make the first save, you go and you do the first boss, you do all the remaining RPD sections with Mr. X now roaming around, the clock tower, the prison section, Ada joins you, the sewer, the alligator fight, Ada's section, and only then you want to think about saving and make sure you're here with about 1 hour and 50 minutes on the clock. God, this was so nerve-wracking. There was like, I got murked a few times, like 40 minutes into this stretch, which is absolutely brutal, like having to load it back that far, especially like on this hardcore difficulty. It's just so punishing that it's so easy to die, and there's so many sections in the game where you can balls up and just it's all gone. So it's a pain in the ass, but with enough focus it is possible. But yeah, it's not nice, but you know, you're doing it because it's hard, so as long as you're still having fun, you just keep running it. Now, after you've made your second save, you want to be doing the entirety of the sewers, so like the boss fight, getting to the stars lab after that, then you do a good chunk of the star lab, I think all of it ideally, but you know, all the liquors and all that, and then you make a save, your last save of the game. Yeah, again, really annoying, pain in the ass, but with enough focus as possible. Just be prepared to have that gut punch of dying and loading it all the way back to the sewers. Once you're at this stage, I would say you're basically done, although don't get too comfortable as I did, because you know, there's 2 big bosses at the end of the game, and I got absolutely wrecked on the final boss, so that one stung. I was so close. I felt I could taste it. I could taste the hardcore S plus. I could taste the infinite rockets. But I got back to it, and yeah, I finally did do it. So I achieved the notorious hardcore S plus rank on Resi 2 and unlocked the beautiful infinite rocket launcher. From here on out, life was just golden for this run. It was all plain sailing. I had my infinite rocket launcher, and yeah, so with that reward, I felt I could do everything remaining. Players hardcore S rank, making sure to clean up any collectibles along the way. With that done and all the remaining collectibles cleared, the platy was done. Now, normally this is where I stop. I just do the platy and I go on to the next game. DLC trophies, as I said at the start, don't interest me. If the platinum is achievable without them, yeah, fuck it. I don't want to be doing all that, but this game only has a few of them, and as I said, I do love it dearly, so I decided to go for the full list. None of the DLC achievements are really worth mentioning here, except for one, Hell of a Sheriff, for completing a scenario called No Way Out. It's essentially a COD Zombies map, except it's incredibly close quarters, and they did not hold back when making it. It's like so annoying, it's so punishing. This one really took a good few tries, and it's really rage-inducing. It required a lot of patience and strategy and mixing it up every now and then. At one point, I definitely regretted going down this cursed path, but I mean, what was I going to do? Like, leave it at 43 out of 44 trophies? Most people would probably say yeah, and they would go on with their life, but you know, but apparently I love zombie games more than life, so I suffered for another few hours, and I made it to the end, and with that, my favorite game of the franchise was platted and completed.
A game of legend. Resident Evil 4 was a game of legend. So remaking it in the RE engine, it was bound to be a smash success. It was, but it was the only game in this entire list which somehow, I don't know, took me 100 hours. It took me 100 hours to get the platinum trophy for this game. I don't know why I do this to myself, but I think a large part of it was, you know, I was in no rush. I was just, you know, playing it normal, very casually, and I played it a bit more just for fun afterwards. But, you know, when doing research for this video, I was, you know, comparing notes and guides and stuff, and the general estimation is like 50 hours, so I think that 100 is kind of insane, but there's maybe some reasons for the extended playtime, which I'll get into. But yeah, I mean, this one took a while. I love this game, incredibly fun, but I think Most things after 100 hours get a little old, and this is no exception.
It's the longest game in the franchise, and to platy it, I think I did like 6 runs with some partial runs in there, just playing it for fun. I think that's how I got to the runtime I did. Before I go into the runs, here's what was needed. Just the run requirements, glossing over some misc stuff here. So you have to beat the game on professional difficulty. You have to beat the game in 8 hours or less. The speedrun trophies usually sit at around 3 hours, so you can see that this game is a little beefier. Beat the game without buying anything from the merchant. Beat the game with no healing items. Beat the game using only handguns and knife. Beat the game on hardcore S plus rank, which is, new game, no infinite rocket, it's under 5 hours 30. Beat the game on standard S plus rank, new game, no infinite rocket launcher, under 5 hours.
And originally, before launch, this game required you to get the Platinum Trophy because for the trophy for unlocking all the weapons, one of those weapons was the hand cannon. Initially, there was only one way to get this, and that was to get a professional S plus rank, which meant beating the game on professional difficulty, which is very, very difficult in this game. On a new game, obviously, you needed to do it in 5 hours 30 or less, and you had only 15 saves to work with. Now, this game originally on my first run, I think clocked in at something like 22 hours. So, I mean, the time is one thing, like, I'm sure feasible, like, eventually, but the 15 saves is, like, nuts. Like, you had to know this game so well to be able to do this, like, clinically. You need to be able to, like, speed run it, but also do things reliably over and over again, because, you die a lot, so you have to be able to consistently get through these parts on the hardest difficulty setting. It was a nightmare.
The patch brought Mercenaries mode, which came with an alternate unlock method for the hand cannon. Get an S rank on 3 Mercenaries maps. I cannot explain to you how much easier this is. It's not even comparable. I weighed up whether I wanted to still do the professional S plus run since I'd been training for it and dedicated a lot of time to it, but I decided, I hate myself to some extent, some of the stuff I've been doing here, but I didn't quite hate myself that much, and yeah, I just went for the Mercenaries. You are rewarded pretty handsomely still, so you get the cat ears accessory, which gives you all guns, infinite ammo, making subsequent runs like absolutely piss easy. You also unlock the S plus trophies for hardcore and standard if you do it. They stack when done on professional, but if you do it on hardcore, so if you go for the hardcore S plus run, doesn't stack with the standard trophy for some reason. I have no idea why they've done it that way, but that's how it works. So it essentially saves you doing an entire playthrough. Anyway, with that out of the way, here's the route I plotted to play. So yeah, regular playthrough, having played the original Resi 4, I could never quite get into it in the way that everyone else did. I loved the cheesy dialogue and the general vibe, but I felt some of it just didn't feel as fun to me, and I really felt the length of it. I think mostly due to the inclusion of Ashley and that whole system. During our 2020 Resi run, this one dragged the most on replay, I felt, apart from Resi 6. But the remake, oh god. As you'd imagine, the gameplay is just immaculate here. It's like all the good stuff of the original game optimized to perfection in the RE engine. I had an absolute blast, an immaculate game. Is Ashley still annoying? Yes. Does the game being so unbelievably good make up for it? I would say yes, absolutely. Then I did a normal run, or it was unassisted or normal, I can't remember, but just another run dedicated to getting all the collectibles, all the jewelry, all the maps, all the clockwork goods, collectibles, and any misc trophies, like any boss-related enemy ones. Also, during this run, saving up the money for the next step. I'd say the hardest misc step was getting the S rank on all the shooting range stuff. That was a real pain in the ass, actually. Well, it could be worse. It's not as bad as some of the stuff I've had to do, but it was definitely the hardest misc trophy. Okay, so professional in this game is really hard. I'd say it's even a little harder than most other versions of professional, but in true Resi fashion, it could be made tolerable by unlocking the infinite rocket launcher. Although the same cannot be said about the S plus runs. The infinite rocket launcher in the RE4 remake is unlocked slightly differently. Instead of doing a certain run or getting a specific rank, you simply have to save up 2 million pitas, or however the fuck you say that, Through my previous 2 runs, I'd saved up enough and bought it at the end of my last run. This meant I could start a new game plus, have my rocket launcher ready, and just blast through professional, combining this with the no merchant and speed runs I needed. This setup had been done well, so this really wasn't too bad. Just a case of running through it, not being silly with puzzles, and trying not to blow up Ashley, which definitely did not happen like 50 times. Oh my god. But yeah, 2 big rewards came out of this run, and that's not including the trophies themselves. So one was for being on hardcore with an A rank, which just meant I did it in less than 10 hours. I unlocked armor for Ashley, like one of the best unlock items in Resi history. Oh my god. Meaning all subsequent runs, Ashley could not be picked up by enemies. I could have cried. I could have cried with happiness, and better for her, she'd have some sort of unexplainable immunity to rockets, so double good. 2, the Chicago Sweeper, so a bonus weapon that stays in your chest even when starting a new game, so that's pretty good. Its ticket upgrade grants it infinite ammo, so this is a kind of way that you can make S+ ranks more manageable. You can do the side quest to get the spinels or spinels or whatever they're called, and yeah, you can save up them all from the first area of the game, which means by the time you get to the castle, you can unlock infinite ammo. It was after this run that I began training for the professional S+ rank. As I said, that patch wasn't out yet, so I was running it daily. Probably a big factor in my total runtime, but eventually the patch came. I unlocked the hand cannon, and since I'd been burning through so much of the game in such a short amount of time, I was genuinely burnt out. Since not doing the professional S+ run meant I'd need to do separate hardcore S+ and standard S+ runs, plus the no heal and knife handgun only runs, I felt it was just too much. So I decided to take a break and come back to it when I actually wanted to do it, when it would be fun again.
So yeah, I took a bit of a longer break than I intended, but you know, that life thing again happened. And yeah, I mean, also just I didn't want to force myself to do it, so this is when I naturally wanted to do it. Yeah, so I took a look and I reminded myself what it was I needed to do, which was the hardcore S+ run, the standard S+ run, the knifey handgunny only run, and the no healy run. I prefer to, you know, go up the hill, climb the hill, and then take a leisurely stroll down, if you know what I mean. So I started with the hardcore S+ run.
It was the worst thing I had to do for this play for sure. So hardcore and RE4 remake can really kick your ass. Like, I mean, professional is harder obviously, but hardcore is still real hard. But yeah, I was prepared. Ashley had her armor on, eliminating a lot of the frustration. I had the Chicago Sweeper. I knew that solid strat from my professional training, meaning I could have infinite ammo by the time I reached the castle. The problem was certain sections would just really spike in difficulty. Like the cabin survival section was really annoying. The double Gatador section fight was just a real pain in my experience in a way. My experience alternated between feeling fine and getting absolutely stomped on, bashing my head against the section for a good while, and then stressing about the time limit. My worst nightmare with this stuff is, you know, what happened with Resi 1, where you get locked out and having to do it all again, especially with this game taking so long. But, you know, with enough locking in, I knuckled down and got it done. Hardest challenge was out of the way. So the descent begins here. So same thing, but on standard. Unsurprisingly, the same, but easier. With that done, only 2 runs remained. Handgunny only, and no healing items. The only issue was I really could not be bothered playing the game another 2 times. I looked up online to see if, you know, people stack these runs, and I found a bunch of posts recommending against it. Apparently, even unassisted, doing the knifey only run without heals can be a bit annoying, especially on some bosses. So, you know, unable to find a Reddit comment to enable my lazy decision, I accepted the sensible route would be to do 2 separate runs. I then, of course, completely ignored that and then did them in 1 run anyway. And, you know, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. They were right. They were right. It was fine for most parts, but some boss sections were genuinely a pain. You know, never underestimate a Reddit mod, I guess, but it really wasn't that bad. And so for anybody looking to be enabled, I enable you. You are now enabled. Consider yourself enabled. Because, yeah, I did it. And with that, after 1 year and 100 hours, the platy was in the bag. Now only 1 remains. The Resident Evil I found the hardest.
Yeah, so for me, Resident Evil 8 Village has the hardest platy out of all of the Resis, which in hindsight, it does feel a little odd because, you know, some of these games like, you know, Resi 4, that took me 100 hours. This one I had platted within 11 days of it being released. So, you know, why then does it rank hardest out of all the other Resi games? Well, it's all down to one trophy, to be honest. I spent half of those days that I took to platy it all dedicated on one trophy. And fuck, I fucking hate this trophy. I hate this trophy so much. I will be covering it in a second.
Overall though, I love Resident Evil 8 Village. It's fantastic. Genuinely one of the best entries in the franchise. If RE7 was a breath of fresh air the series needed, Village was its weird cousin. Resi at its best always straddles horror with something a little weird, a little goofy. Normally that's cheesy B-movie action stuff, and while there's some of that here, this game's weirdness comes from the environment and the people in it. Lady Dimitrescu, probably butchering that, instantly becoming a franchise icon. The Duke, like, who is this guy? Like, what the fuck is going on? The game has so many quirks that it feels like it truly has its own thing going on here while still having that Resi DNA. It's a fantastic game, and I have great memories of playing it when it came out.
So me and Cammy are still living together at this point when Resident Evil 8 Village comes out, and you know, naturally we have taken the day off work. We're super hyped for it, and we sit down and we start playing it together. And you know, we're just taking our time with it, enjoying it, playing it on normal difficulty, just exploring the game, you know, having an amazing time with it. We're also at this point, we live with my actual biological brother, and so every now and then he'll pop in to kind of check in on our progress, and he'll stay and he'll watch a little section, and then he'll swing back and we're on the next section, yada yada, you get it. Anyway, me and Cammy, I think we've completed over 3 days, so we take 3 days to beat the game, and so my brother Leo is popping in and out, and he's seeing this progress. And anyway, at the end of the 3rd day, we're like, okay, well, that was great, we loved the game. Then on the next day, so the 4th day, we decide that we want to do a challenge run. So we want to do the knife only one. I think that without heals and without spending 10,000 lei or lie, or however the hell you say the currency name in this. And you know, so I always hear the story from Leo's perspective, and it's my brother coming in the room, and it's just so jarring because he was, you know, over the last 3 days he'd seen us like slowly making progress, and like 2 days later coming in and seeing us at the next bit, and then it's just like in a single day we absolutely rinse the game. We go from it being a fresh new game that we could only before imagine in our heads from the trailers we've seen, to like, you know, 4 days later he's coming in, we're like at the end of the game after starting a new game that day, like slashing this boss's shins up, like doing all these crazy tactics, and it just sort of is the quintessential Resident Evil experience. And I think part of why I love the game so much is that transition from the unknown to the known to a degree in such a short period of time that you're like slicing things up.
We polished that run off in a day. I remember some really nippy bits, the boss fight when you play as Chris being particularly rough, but overall not too bad. After this, I did another playthrough, cleaning up all the misc trophies, and also continued saving up lei or lie or whatever the hell. All these currency, can they just pick one? And I'll learn how to pronounce it if they pick one. I don't know all the names of the currencies. I needed a boatload of it to buy and fully upgrade the Stake Magnum. Now, I've given a lot of love to the Infinite Rocket Launcher in this video, but this is a great time to shout out the Infinite Magnums. Infinite Magnums are amazing in Resi games. Insane damage, and they won't blow up any of your companions. It's just, yeah, they're great. Also, Magnum ammo is like actually findable in the game, and you know how precious it is, so having infinite of it feels like very cathartic, especially for a hoarder like me. So I got the Infinite Magnum, and I was ready to do the Village of Shadows playthrough in under 3 hours. The last 2 story trophies I needed. But I got a little distracted for 6 days on the only other trophy I had left, getting an S rank on all 8 mercenary maps. My least favorite trophy, and I think the hardest trophy in the entire mainline franchise.
Okay, so just to say here, this is doable. Like, it's completely doable, and the ranking system even goes up to, you know, triple S. Like, it's triple S, and it only asks you for a singular S rank. So they didn't even go as insane as they needed to here. So there is a level of mercy here, but it just asks you for so much more patience and strategy than anything else in the franchise, in the mainline franchise, I think. And this was not something that I had an abundance of at this particular time in my life, so I was just getting like short fused and pissed off. And especially the fucking last maps. The last 4 maps are fucking awful. Just be warned.
For anyone who doesn't know, Mercenaries is a reoccurring mode in the franchise. It's also in, Resi 4, Resi 5. Enemies spawn in, killing them scores points and adds time to the clock. That's the basic gist. It's never really been my bag, honestly, but I'll say that Resi 8's take on the mode is genuinely great. I love how you get randomized perks each run that make things feel different each time and give you that hell yeah moment when land exactly the perk that you've been wanting. Kind of scratches that sort of roguelike kind of thing. I think where they lost me is having multiple areas within a map with the rank based on the overall map rather than individual areas. Basically, to get an S rank, you're going to have to shoot enemies in a kind of rhythm, maintaining your combo, because without the combo, bye-bye S rank. You do your best to dodge them and keep the combo up, but oh my god, it is so frustrating when you can't find an enemy that you swear should have spawned here, but is somehow over in a completely different section and you lose your combo. Especially if it's in like a critical moment in the last area on the map. My main issue is that when you get to the end of an area, you're only partially done. Maps are made of multiple areas. I think like 4 or 5 in some of them. You cannot believe how frustrating it is when you're going for the S rank. You get to the final area with a near perfect run, and halfway through the last area, something happens and kills your combo. Or you die. Some runs can take like 25 minutes, and the last 4 maps are harder variants that genuinely suck. Enemies are almost one-shotting you at this point, forcing you to like deeply master the maps and the enemy spawns. I understand why it's this hard. It's supposed to be. It's like a challenge, a little extra fun at the end of the game, but making the rank per area rather than per map would have been way less punishing and for me more fun, but I guess, people like different things. That said, I did eventually manage to do it after hours of running them over and over and over again, and I got the trophy. This paved the way for my final run, Village of Shadows, in under 3 hours. Hard, but with the Magnum it was alright apart from a few select bits. Again, Chris's section was real pain and I got stuck for a good while there, but after the pain of Mercenaries, this felt like a mercy. I pushed through and it was done. I had platted Resident Evil 8 Village, meaning I platted all mainline Resident Evil games before Resident Evil 9 was released. The challenge is complete.
At the time of recording this video, I have now finished the challenge. Resident Evil 7 was actually the last one that I did. I don't know why it panned out that way, I didn't plan it that way, but that's just how it happened. In doing this challenge and making this video, so it made me think a lot about, these games and the challenges I set myself, about trophy hunting in general. Like, why do I do it all? For some games, it's genuinely hard to justify, and I have trouble finding that answer. But for Resi, it's clearer. It's just out of pure love and joy and fun. I love these games, and I have for literally over half of my life at this point. They'll never be more than just video games and little digital trophies, right? That's all they are at the end of the day. But it is crazy to think that through all of my life, as I've gone through all of these changes, from being a teenager in high school to going through university to graduating university to getting my first flat to starting my career, through all of this change there has been a constant, and that's been for whatever reason, Resident Evil. Clearly something about them fires the right chemicals in my brain, and that satisfying loop keeps me coming back. Or should I say, it fires something in our brain, because I did not do this challenge alone. I did this challenge almost every step of the way with my best friend Cammy. It's crazy to think that this challenge technically started over 15 years ago on late night Xbox 360 sessions doing professional on Resident Evil 5. And saw us living together, playing the games together. And then even when we went our separate ways, got our own flats. What brings us together? Resi. It's always Resi. Resi saw us torturing herself, our beat up asses pathetically trying to stay awake as we play Resident Evil on hardware as old as our friendship. I think that's the real answer here, at least with this franchise, is, you know, me and Cammy just have so much fun with these games. And we've developed an eternal friendship, a brotherhood through doing it. Even after all this time, if we get a chance to go back to being those kids playing our silly Japanese game with a roided up rocket wielder, we take it because we have so much fun doing it. So cherish your brothers, your sisters, your gaming hardware that refuses to die, your infinite ammo rocket launchers, and have fun. Unless you're getting chased by a demon man on the brink of sleep deprivation, in which case, yeah, just go to bed.